you to Vandergraaf for sponsoring this month's edition of Road to Recovery. Visit their website for more information about the Vandergraaf drum motor designed specifically for heavy industry applications.
Let's talk about commercial construction a little bit. That's an area where it seems like there's some new segments within the greater commercial segment that's kind of going to be driving things going forward. In 2020, Richard, we saw data center construction, the logistics infrastructure.
Yep.
Warehouses continue to be big. Amazon's not going anywhere. If anything, there's probably be more warehouses coming. But on the flip side of that, you see retail and hotel. Those aren't necessarily going to be big drivers. I wouldn't expect that. I don't think anybody does. But despite that, Dodge is forecasting, I think it's 5% growth in commercial construction. To me, that's great news, considering that there's this kind of fundamental shift taking place within commercial. Again, take us inside your mind and how is it that you're seeing 5% growth there with all those different areas that I'm kind of outlining, from the warehouses all the way through to maybe the more slippery on the downside hotel retail type of establishments?
Sure. So there are really two elements behind that growth projection for 2021. As you mentioned, the warehousing and the logistics side, that is now the largest non-residential building type that we track at Dodge in terms of square footage. So that has certainly been driving the bus, so to speak, over this past couple of years. And as we think about the continued shift to online retailing, and as e-commerce distributors like Amazon continue to eat market share away from traditional brick and mortar, that will continue to support demand for warehousing activity and therefore push construction up. And as we look at the pipeline of projects that we have in our planning database, there's certainly enough warehouse projects to support further growth, not only in 2021, but I'd say even into 2022 and potentially beyond. The other side of where we expect growth in the commercial sector is the office, surprisingly, the office sector. And I think there are two things driving that growth. Number one is renovations. We do track renovations as part of our data on the dollar value side. And as we look at people starting to return to offices potentially in the back half of 2021, once we all have been vaccinated and whatnot, landlords and owners and developers will certainly be building in additional space for workers, perhaps renovating away from having open space or cubes into more walled offices and whatnot, improved air handling, improved HVAC systems. That's all captured under the renovation portion of our data. And then you alluded to it in the question as well. We track data centers as part of office construction, and that will certainly be a growth area in 2021 and beyond, whether you think of more work from home or school from home or just more streaming and whatnot. That has pushed the demand up for data centers, be they Facebook, Amazon, Google, or even the smaller, more high-tech security data centers. That's certainly driving growth. And we think when we combine that warehouse activity and the logistics activity with the office renovations as well as with the data centers, that's more than enough to offset weakness in the retail and the hotel side. But even on the retail side, we are looking for a gain in retail construction in 2021. We're looking at a 7% gain. Note, though, that is less than $1 billion in terms of level. We're looking at the levels of retail construction here pretty much on par with what we were seeing during the Great Recession. So these are pretty low. But what's driving that retail growth is if we think about the residential sector, and we're starting to see this exodus of people from those dense urban areas into the suburbs and beyond, and that should pull some sense of retail construction with it. Again, level-wise here, this is a very low dollar value. Where hotels, I think hotels are not going to show any growth in 2021. That's really, I think, into 2022 and beyond, once people feel more comfortable traveling and once hotel owners and operators and developers have dug themselves out of the very deep financial hole that they're in.
That's interesting and somewhat surprising to me, on the office front and on the retail front, but everything you talk about on the renovations with the offices, and then maybe just kind of a shift in where people are moving or living nowadays, 2020 kind of forcing some change. Yeah, that's driving some new retail, which is certainly interesting, but good for agri-producers supplying those sorts of projects.
Absolutely. The retail, one of the big questions we got during the Great Recession and the wake of the Great Recession, as e-commerce started to eat, the dinner away from brick and mortar, is brick and mortar retail dead? And the answer then, as it is now for retail, is no. Brick and mortar retail is not dead. It has changed, it has evolved, and it will continue to do so. Again, we're not looking at kind of record-breaking levels here in retail construction. We're looking at less than $1 billion worth of activity between 20 and 21, but it's certainly a step in the right direction, considering what 2021 was like for most folks in our industry.
Thank you to Vandergraaf for sponsoring this month's edition of Road to Recovery. Visit their website for more information about the Vandergraaf drum motor designed specifically for heavy industry applications.